We are always particularly excited when we have an alumnus from SVA come and join us for I3, and so we welcome you to the I3 lecture series hosted by the Masters in Digital Photography program at the School of Visual Arts, and Thomas Holton is our guest speaker tonight. Thomas graduated with an MFA from the School of Visual Arts in 2005. His photographs have been widely exhibited, including venues such as New York Public Library, the Museum of the City of New York, the China Lishui International Photography Festival, and Sasha Wolf Gallery. He is best known for his epic 16-year and counting documentary project, The Lams of Ludlow Street, which chronicles the life of a Chinese-American family within the confines of their 350-square-foot apartment in Manhattan's Chinatown. Featured by Aperture magazine and then on 3 separate occasions by the New York Times, The Lams of Ludlow Street was published as a monograph by Kerer Verlag in 2016. Please help me welcome Thomas Holton to our lecture series. Thank you.
Good evening. Thank you for inviting me. It's good to be back to SVA. I went to SVA down 21st Street, so I got off the train today and walked 4 blocks east before I realized I'm going the wrong way. So came in here a little frazzled and sweaty, so bear with me, but I could use the walk. Like I said, I went to the School of Visual Arts. I'm going to present to you a photography project I've been working on that started at the School of Visual Arts many years ago, and it's called The Lams of Ludlow Street. This is the first picture. I'm not going to really get into the pictures as yet. I love coming back to schools. I'm a full-time teacher myself. I love coming back to schools and talking to students about this because I also like to talk about process and how pictures evolve from A to B to C and how it all works, and not just for me to talk the whole time and click from one picture to another. So I'm fully aware of the creative process and the ups and downs and the confusion that's part of it. And I certainly went through a lot of creative blocks while making this work and trying to even figure out what the work was. I had a lot of help at SVA. And so I'm really, really happy to be back. I'm happy to have gone to SVA also, but I had a lot of help at SVA, and it's being in school is a good thing. So just wanted to preface that. So, but before we get into the program or the photographs, I suppose, I just want to talk about a little bit about myself, what I tell my students also. All right, and so I'm really happy to be a photographer. I always tell my students, who are working on projects. Many of you guys are working on projects. I actually hate to use the word project. It's a lazy, easy way to say something you're working on, because hopefully it means something, more than you than this, like, I'm going to do this for a little while, right? And so, but I lazily use it. But in a world, in a world saturated by images now, right? Everyone's a photographer. Everyone's phone is a photographer. Everyone's, you can upload it, get 1 million likes and all that. Everyone's a photographer. So I always tell my students, and have to remind myself all the time, to really think about what it is that makes you stand out a little bit, and what makes some projects stand out, or how do some people get books published or featured here and there in galleries or museums or whatnot. And for you to understand that what makes it, what resonates with me is to make a project that's personal, that you're engaged with, that you care about. All right, if you're not photographing something you care about, you kind of lose interest, and the viewer will kind of notice that, and you too will kind of lose interest. All right, so it's easy for me to say, but try to make something that only you can make. And this is the teacher in me just talking, right? So try to make something that only you can make, dig deep, figure out what you find, engaging, and something that even through the ups and downs of the creative process, when all the self-doubt that's involved with being a photographer or being an artist, you don't quit. You just go through it because there's something there that you find, that's grabbing you and grabbing your attention, that no matter how many downs there are, that you're still pushed through it. And I know there's something there, so I think I'm going to keep trying and shooting. All right, so that's a little bit of a preface. What I like also to do is, if you have questions, instead of me just talking for 45 minutes, if you have any questions, I'll gladly take them as we go along, just to kind of break things up a little bit. All right, so I will show you some of the work. It started in 2003. And please, if you have any questions, I'll gladly take them right now, so I don't have to talk for 45 minutes. I worked all day, so I'm a little tired. So so a little bit about myself, all right? So I grew up here in New York City. I'm from New York. I've lived here all my life, but I'm half Chinese. My mother is from mainland China. My dad's from New York. I am half Chinese, obviously, but I've lived here in New York my whole life, and I've always felt half Chinese. But I grew up in Manhattan and going to like private schools. You know, I kind of jumped into my mother's life. My mother's from Taiwan. I jumped into my father's life here in New York, and so I never felt 100%, you know, as one with my whole half. All right. So my dad was a photographer. I grew up surrounded by the medium. I started taking pictures, taking classes in high school. Got a little interested. I started taking more and more pictures in college. Started getting more and more interested. Summer workshops. Moved back here in New York City. Assisted for about 9 years, just carrying, you know, people's cameras around. First on set, last one to leave kind of thing. Did a lot of commercial work. And then I decided that I really wanted nothing to do with the commercial world, and not to, you know, not to disparage it whatsoever, but it wasn't for me. So I went and earned my, went to SVA, got my master's degree, and started teaching part-time, you know, adjunct here and there throughout the city, and then continued doing my work. So I'm half Chinese. I grew up here in New York City, like I said, but my grandparents, my entire mother's family moved here to New York. But for the entire life of my adult life and childhood, obviously, I could not speak to my grandparents, and they could not speak to me. So there was always some kind of barrier there. And they lived in Grand Street, right in the heart of Chinatown, literally right around the corner from where these guys live. So when I started really getting serious about photography, I'd load my camera up with film at the time, go down to Chinatown, explore, check it out, really want to look like, you know, really want to see what the life was like down there. But it was very superficial. I'm just on the street. You're photographing the guys on Mulberry Street, Mott Street, you know, the guys selling at the markets, which is great, but I was challenged, and thankfully I had teachers, and I was challenged by teachers here at School of Visual Arts to get behind closed doors. And so, you know, get beyond the surface, get beyond the superficial. How do you actually see the life? So, excuse me. So how do you do that? So what I did was I Googled Chinatown housing advocate. And I just wanted to see how the heck do I get behind closed doors in Chinatown. Again, I was just doing everything on the street where everyone's taking the same pictures, right? Tourist pictures, everyone's taking the same types of pictures. And I got like 5 agencies in the city that are housing advocates for the residents in Chinatown, so that these people know their rights as tenants. I called them all up, told them I was a photographer interested in photographing the world of Chinatown behind closed doors. I offered my services to give them the photographs also so they could use them. 4 out of 5 said, no way, there's no way you could do that. We can't bring you to our clients' homes. There's a, client attorney privileges, whatnot. So I was like, all right, but then the 5th one, that's why you keep going. The 5th one, it's like, no problem. Come with me every week. I go, this woman from the university settlement, she would go visit certain families in the Chinatown neighborhood and make sure that each one of these families had something taken care of. Hot water, rats, no water, whatever. And so she went with all around the neighborhood, spent about a half hour each. We're spending like 2 or 3 hours visiting 5 or 6 families. And she said, come along with me. I was like, really? She's like, yeah, come along with me. So I owe everything to this one woman, right? So 4 said no, but 1 said yes. And so that's all you need, right? So I started photographing these families in Chinatown, going to their homes. And I would only spend about 20 minutes there. The housing advocate would explain to them in Chinese who I was. They would let me take some pictures, but they would just, sit there. If I come to your house for a half hour, you would just probably sit on the couch, let this guy take some pictures. You're not going to, get into the rhythm of life a little bit. So I went to about 10 different families' house, and I always describe it like this, meaning it was broad, right, 10 families, but very thin. Okay, very thin, right? It was just the 20 minutes I was there, the half hour I was there, they just sat on the couch waiting for this weird guy to leave, right? Why does this guy have a camera? The housing advocate says it's okay, so I guess it's okay. And so I was happy to get behind closed doors, and one of the families I met with the Lams. And what I did was, I'd write down their address, their names, and a week later, maybe even less than a week later, I'd bring prints back, right? I always wanted to make sure that they knew I wasn't just going to take pictures that first time there and never see them again, right? So I brought prints back to her home, and I brought prints back to all the homes. And people would open the door, grab the prints, slam the door in my face, wouldn't open the door, but you could tell they're home because you could see the shadows under the doors, right? And so, or not even, open the door whatsoever. But when I went back to the Lams and brought back a print of this very photograph, she invited me for dinner. She wanted to come in. I said, yeah, can I shoot some more? She's like, yeah, come on in. And then she's like, want to stay for dinner? I was like, yes, please. And so now I'm eating a home-cooked meal at a fifth-story, walk-up tenement building on Ludlow Street, actually beginning to see life a little bit. And that was 16 years ago. And so I decided instead of going like this, guess what? You go like this, right? One family, in depth. And so I went back week after week, and it's been a regular thing I've been doing for many years. And I would say, can I come back next week? And they're like, yeah, sure, come on in. And I would come back, can I come back on Tuesday? And they're like, yeah, come on, no problem. And it was, obviously, that was it, right? This is what I was looking for, pure, I wouldn't say pure luck, but, perseverance, phone calls, shooting for 6 months in Chinatown, all these pictures on the street that you don't even use anymore, don't even like, but you have to go through that process sometimes, right? And so I start showing the pictures now. This is from the very first day I met the Lams. That is Michael, Franklin, and Cindy. They live in 350 square feet, 5 of them, on a 5th floor walk-up in Chinatown. They were showing me their passport pictures because they were about to go to Hong Kong to visit their grandparents. And so this is from the very first day I met. Their apartment, which you will see some pictures, their apartment is very small. It's just one of these, I don't know if anyone's been to these little tenement apartments in Chinatown. Was communication initially a barrier to the family? The father speaks pretty good English. The mother, Shirley, she speaks much better English now, but she was kind of half-half. The kids spoke well. They're all born here, and they went to a dual language school called PS 184, Shaowen School, downtown. It's pretty remarkable. It's actually half Chinese, half English school. So quite often I would tell the kids something and they would tell the mother. And then she would say something, they would tell me. And then we're still doing that because the mother doesn't know everything yet. All right. So they live in a very small room. They don't have a single closet. You'll see some pictures. But I was focused on that. I was looking at that. I was like, okay, I'm working with a housing advocate. But anyway, so this is just the first photograph from the series when I met them. I was shooting black and white film at the time, 35 millimeter, a little Robert Frank reference right there, right? I always thought documentary photographers have to shoot black and white. Isn't that the rule, right? So I just used that film. I was shooting 35. I kept returning, and they became more and more used to me being there. That's the key thing, right? They became more and more used to me being there. I wasn't just like that one time there for like 15 minutes and they never saw me again. I think a lot of the success, at least with me bonding with this family, is the 3 young kids, right? Because they're kids. They don't know, who you are, what SVA is, or what photography is. They just played with you, right? And also I provided like babysitting almost, right? So, I definitely entertained the children while the mother could go shopping and cooking. So I was like, free babysitter. So that worked out too. So this is on the roof. That's Franklin riding his bicycle. You can see that we barbecue up there. This is on the roof of their Ludlow Street apartment building. That view is no longer there. If you are familiar with what's happening in Chinatown, they are surrounded by luxury condos right now. And so we don't know how many years they have left in that one building, but that view is definitely just gone. Still shooting black and white, shot black and white for a year, just peeking over at the neighbors, a little fresh air, fresh sun to dry their laundry. But I shot black and white for a solid year. And I was getting behind closed doors, getting to know them a little bit, but then I hit a wall, didn't know exactly what I was photographing. I was photographing basically everything. And then, you start shooting a lot of pictures and nothing's coming out. There's nothing that's really resonating with you as a keyword. And one of my professors at school was like, why don't you try color? Just mix it up, change things. And it changed everything. This is their front door. Color is emotion. Color is information. What I particularly liked about this photograph is I must have walked by this door 30, 40 times before I actually noticed it. All right, and so as a lesson as a photographer and as a lesson for a teacher to photographers, I think that's really important because the day that I went there where the door was open it was open and the light was coming in from the 5th floor roof, and it kind of reflected this kind of really thickly applied on paint. It struck me that day. But the first 40 times, I never noticed it. So what I've really enjoyed about this project as a photographer also is that no matter how many times I've gone back, their apartment fits twice in this room, right? No matter how many times I've gone back, I'm fairly certain I'll probably, hopefully find something, right? So when people say like, oh, there's nothing to photograph, like if there's, something that resonates with you, that you find important, something that you love, that means something to you, you go back. So anyway, I switched to color. This is their front door. This was the cover of the book when it came out a couple years ago. I like it also because behind doors are what? I'm a teacher now. Behind doors are what? People. What do people have? Lives, stories, secrets. Very good. And so, so I like this as the front cover. It also is pretty arresting as a big red cover. This is an image of their bedroom. You can see that their bedroom, I use wide-angle lenses, and I'm scrunched into the corner. 5 of them slept in 3 mattresses jammed together, and with the family wedding portrait up top. So this is a really, really small room. This is a family portrait. So this is the one pose picture where I had actually asked him to do something. So there's the father, Stephen, Cindy, Franklin, Shirley, Michael. Today's Michael's birthday. I texted him before. So you could see a little bit elements of their home here. They don't have a single closet, like I said, so they just jam pipes in the corners, right? So I always tell my, students that work at a pretty kind of a private high school uptown, you're not allowed to complain about your small closets. You're not allowed to complain that you don't have enough room for your shoes, right? They don't have a single closet, so everything's kind of in Jaffa blocks and pipes and stuff like that. But you can see here kind of this is the dining room, kitchen, and bathtub. The bathtub's in the lower corner right here. So this is the one portrait I have where I actually asked them to stand out and do something. It must have been near Christmas time, so because the Christmas lights were up. One thing I noticed, actually one thing I didn't notice, was that there's 5 family members, but then a student, a colleague of mine at SVA when I was at school noticed that there were 6 settings. So I thought that kind of resonated really nicely. Who's the 6th? Hey, there you go. So, so that kind of oh yeah, that's me, right? So they put out 6, and so they became pretty comfortable with me being there. I got to the point where the parents legally signed me up at their kids' school that I could pick up their children. So I would go. I'm telling you, I was instant babysitter, right? I would get there, and Shirley would say I'm going shopping. You get the kids. I'm like, okay. So I would go down there and pick up the kids. And it got to the point where the kids would see me in the auditorium down in their school and just look at me and go, oh, Tom's here. It wasn't oh, what's this guy doing here? Why is this photographer? They just see me and get their backpacks and we go. And so I became the uncle. They clearly became comfortable around me, all right? So this is Shirley preparing dinner, kind of motherly gaze over onto the bathtub, and all 3 kids are bathing. And this is to the point where they're clearly comfortable with me being there. This is maybe after, I would probably say 8 months, of regularly going. So I love the color coordinated hangers also. In a very small apartment, right, you have to kind of keep things organized. So kept shooting color. This is about 14 years ago. This is, I would always go up to the roof to see what's going on, play with the kids. Shirley had organized her laundry up there, was drying the laundry. And that's that view that is no longer there. So originally, like I said, was really working with a housing advocate. Let's talk about, I gave them pictures originally of the other families so they could use them for their brochures. I stopped thinking about the fact they had no closets. I stopped thinking about the small apartment. I got to know them as people. I went to a wedding with them. They're like, come to a wedding with us. I was like, all right. Sure, I'm just that guy there with a camera. And so I started paying really more attention to them as people. I began to know their stories, know what's going on in their lives right now. And this is us eating dinner one day, and I'm at the table eating dinner, and I look over, and Steven's just staring at me. And he he's great to photograph, and he would just kept staring at me, didn't, smile or anything. I love the two hand gestures, kind of like it's a nice kind of moment. If you look carefully in the mirror, there's a mirror behind the sink, and you can kind of see the little girl, the mother, and that's our next door neighbor. I guess she was over. So.
What did he do for a living?
He works at the time he worked for a import-export company, like, those big container ships that bring like widgets back and forth. He worked at one of those, and a lot of that stuff comes from China, and so he was able to communicate, because he's bilingual, manifests or whatever he did. This is still back in 2005. This is Shirley tenderizing pork while watching a Chinese soap opera, and this is in the bedroom. You could kind of see, this little vase right here was in the other picture also. So I love the fact that she just was, getting dinner ready while watching a soap opera, and I'm just sitting there hanging out with her. So this is 2005. It got less and less about their small space and about their lack of closets and all the kind of superficial stuff, and I got to know them as people. All right, so in 2005, I graduated from SVA. I took the time to kind of take a break from this, worked on other projects, got married. Cindy, the little girl, was my flower girl, so that was pretty cool. I don't have any brothers and sisters, so I don't have any nieces, I guess. And it's kind of cool when you look back on it to think about, like, the biggest day of your life at that time, the girl from your photo project is bringing up the flowers. And I thought it was pretty cool, And so, but I stopped photographing them for a while. I needed a break. I did some other things. I had to find work. Got married, but I still saw them all the time. I would go there without my camera sometimes, keep up with what was going on, and saw the kids grow up, have dinner with them. But I would go like once a month instead of like once every week. And but I always thought in the back of my head I would photograph them again, and I knew that if I wanted to photograph them again, I want to tell a new story. Right? So because if you don't tell a new story, you're just doing what? Same thing. You're just repeating yourself. All right? But how's the story evolve? You get to know them as people. So how's life? What's happening? What's going on? And in 2008, Stephen lost his job in the Great Recession, right? And so Shirley took, and now the little girl's in kindergarten now, and so Shirley picked up a job as a home health technician, like a home health nurse, and started taking care of 100-year-old women, right? To make a little bit of money also, because she no longer has to take the kids to school. And also the parents, more importantly, I noticed the parents started fighting a lot more. And they started breaking up. And they started kind of growing distant. They're divorced now. But I saw this kind of happening. I was in the room when they were arguing. The kids were a little bit more morose because the parents are bickering. And you can't really avoid it in 350 square feet, right? So I curiously started taking more pictures, and because I wanted to tell a new story. So this is actually in Henry Street, which is right below, kind of below the Manhattan Bridge. So this is on Henry Street. This is a 100-year-old woman's house. So I started shooting again, and talking about process. This is film. My film camera died. I got an estimate. It was $1,400 to fix. My cameras on eBay were going for $400. So I was like, wow, okay, so this is not worth fixing. So I switched to digital. Yes.
What film camera did you shoot with?
Oh, what film camera? I started off with 35 millimeter, and that red door. Once I went to the red door, I started shooting a Mamiya 645, 120. I already owned it. I did it for, I had it for whatever projects. But I like the 35 millimeter at first because it's obviously smaller and easier to carry around. So the 645 was good because you're familiar with the camera. It's a kind of a clunkier, fatter camera. Switching to color made me look at color now, right, which is another great use of the eye. And the big fat camera slowed me down and made me kind of be a little bit more deliberate. You couldn't kind of quickly shoot because it's just this pig, and you got to change the backs and all that kind of stuff. But now I switched to digital. So this is at the time, this is probably around 2010, 10 in there. The five people in 3 beds, right, the unified family, they started building bunk beds and separating, they're teenagers, right? So they're becoming teenagers. they started building a bunk bed system. So I'm on a bunk bed, there's a bunk ahead of me, and they started putting up curtains. All right, so the visuals of the bedroom changed, but I also see this as like physical barriers, right? But also emotional barriers were going up. The kids, it was a little heavier in the house, right? He's in high school. He went to Stuyvesant, which is a very demanding high school here, so I think he got his ass kicked kind of pretty well over there. Not easy. So all of a sudden, the demands of high school brought him to reality. The other kids were becoming teenagers, and they're also physically getting bigger. So I love this photograph because it just kind of just resonated with me in terms of the barriers going up. Parents are breaking up, emotional barriers. They're feeling a little bit, wanting a little bit more privacy, as well as this a little heaviness. She's remarkable to photograph.
So you just happen to see that, and then you have to like squeeze back.
Yeah. What I was saying is like your camera's nearby. You're a photographer. Your camera's nearby. You're paying attention. You're looking at lighting. You're looking at where people's sitting. She might have been sitting over here before and it was no good, and then she went over there. What happens? Your bells and whistles go off. You're photographers, right? Your bells and whistles go off. Something, I call it an emotional reaction to sight. That's what photography is, at least to me. It's an emotional reaction to sight. Nothing's going on, something's going on. Look at that. All right? So that's at the core for me as a photographer, is that emotional reaction to sight. I mean, she'll sit there, but she's amazing, because I'll say, stay there. And she still to this day will just wait for me. Yes?
Did you use a flash at all?
No. She asked if I use a flash. Digital's incredible because you could shoot in low light. That changed everything. I love this photograph, and she's a remarkable subject. Stephen at the time, again, they were beginning to break up, but he was still there. So that's Michael's foot on the upper bunk. So they're constantly changing their bedroom, which for me as a photographer is great, because every time I go, not every time, but quite often you go there, you go, oh, look, new visuals. Right, so they're moving the bunk beds here, and then they move the bunk beds here, and then they break them up, put a curtain this way. This is over on Allen Street in Chinatown. This is at their friend's house. This is Franklin. This is a work in progress, this young man. He's a great kid, but I look at this from 8 years ago, and I can see where he is now, because I go over there, and he's still playing video games. In fact, I have a picture of him later from about 2 months ago, still playing video games. She became friends with a guy named Nutmeg. That's his nickname. And I was not going to Ludlow Street consistently. I would call him up after work, where are you guys? Or I would just go to Chinatown and then start texting like crazy. And they're at Henry Street, they're at Ludlow Street, they're at Allen Street. And so this is Allen Street. And so have meals with them all the time. But it's definitely that unified family I photographed from like 2002 to 2005 were definitely spreading out. And I saw the father less and less, because the kids always went to where the mom was, because she usually provided, not usually, she almost always provided some kind of meal, Asian mom thing. So you could kind of see here, this is Cindy. She's, again, a remarkable person to photograph. She still is. Camera loves her. She loves the camera, and she will hold still for me. So you could kind of see, like, I'm on a bunk bed, and they move things around. That's her little system of organizing their pencils and papers. You can kind of see the clutter in the background. That's Franklin peeking his head. So his bed was behind a curtain. She had a desk here. I'm on a bed. There's a bed above her. But she's great. But you can see how the family was kind of spreading apart. So what I always wanted to do, and I had a question the other day, was I always want to make a photograph. I have thousands of photographs. I always want to make a photograph that, and this is important for everyone, right? Any photographers, to push the narrative forward. At least especially in a long-term project like this, right? Because there's so many pictures that could repeat themselves. But if there's something that could push the narrative forward, and I know what the narrative is because I'm friends with these guys. If I find an image that I think pushes the narrative forward, I'll fall in love with it, right? Because I know right now the kids are kind of wanting their own space. They're kind of moody teenagers. The parents are breaking up. So this picture works for me in that reason, right? So I'm still doing that now. I'm still trying to figure out what the story is. The kids are in college, one's in grad school now, so I'm still photographing. I was photographing them 3 weeks ago. If there's a picture I like, how does this fit in the greater project, right? Because, you have to edit, which is hard. This is on Confucius Plaza, which is right by the Manhattan Bridge. This is the During the summers, the family moved, they moved the old lady to her son's house because he had air conditioning. But this kind of represents to me like the mom will still make a meal, and I would always go where she was, and the kids would go where she was. And I love just the hands all around the table. The tablecloth is actually just Chinese newspapers. You know, what do you do when you're done? Wrap it all up and throw it out, right? So this is on Confucius Plaza. This is the 100-year-old woman's 80-year-old son's house, right? You follow me there? So there's the 80-year-old son, who's now like 90. He's still alive. So this is on Confucius Plaza. Shirley made a conscious decision to kind of take care of this woman all the time, like 24/7 practically. So this is on Confucius Plaza, and Cindy would go where the mom is usually, and because it's her mom. And the boys would go there for meals, and then I would take them back to Ludlow Street to walk them back because they were still like 12, 13 years old. That's Bo in the background. Bo is still alive. This is the old lady. She is no longer with us. But this is called Board, and this was like a beautiful summer day, like coming to visit her where it's air conditioning, and dang, you should be outside in a beautiful summer day. But I love this image. This is Michael. This is in Confucius Plaza, visiting. This was probably his freshman year in college. I'm a freshman year in high school. He had a hard time in high school. Definitely had a hard time in high school. This is Steven, who I saw less and less, right, because they were breaking up. So I made a concerted effort to see him, right, and not everyone else. So I'm like, hey, listen, I've seen your family for the last month. Can we meet at Ludlow Street? He was still living at Ludlow Street, about to move out. And you could kind of clearly see he's comfortable enough in my presence that I would get there, and he proceeded to fall asleep. And so I've let myself out of their house many a time because everyone falls asleep. I was there a month ago, and the little girl fell asleep. I was like, okay, I guess I'm going to go now. So they don't feel the need to entertain me whatsoever. They want to take a nap after school. They want to take a nap after work. Taking a nap. But this is Stephen. This is Shirley preparing a meal at Henry Street, where the old lady lived. All right, so we get to the point where this is about when he moved out. All right, this is about when he moved out. They got divorced, and he moved out. This is probably just before he moved out. I love the kind of wistful look that he has. Maybe, again, this is the beauty of photography. Maybe he's thinking about the fact that he's about to move out and he's divorced, or maybe he's just looking off to the side. Who knows? But what I said before is I like to make, I tell my students all the time, but I also tell myself, I like to make images that are, open-ended and narrative, right? That doesn't necessarily tell the whole thing, because what does that make you do? Stop, think, right? Do you know what, guys, open-ended narrative, right? So, you have to kind of, think about it, right? And that's what that's what I think interesting photography does. If you have to look at it and think about it, and you kind of linger on it a little bit, and then maybe it sticks with you later, all right? You ever go through a photo book like this, and you always stop at one picture? There's a reason you stop at that one picture, all right? So I'm always striving to make work that's open-ended and narrative. That's just me as a teacher. That's me as a photographer. I don't consider myself in the traditional sense of a photojournalist. I like things that are kind of like a pause in a movie, maybe. So continue on. This is him in New Jersey. So this is his house in New Jersey. He kind of got a room in a kind of a townhouse. I made an effort to pick up. Listen, I'm their weird uncle with a camera. I also have a car, or my wife has a car, right? Which I guess is my car. So I would pick up the kids in Chinatown and then drive to New Jersey so the kids could see their father. So instead of taking a subway to Port Authority and a bus and all that, and also, I want to see where he lives. Guess what? I want to take some pictures. This is maybe 2013. So he moved into Jersey. This is the first time I took her and the oldest brother to New Jersey. He has walk-in closets. And she was amazed that he has walk-in closets because she has no closets. And so she went in and was walking around, and before she came out, my relationship with her is enough. She knows I'm a photographer, and she loves the camera, and the camera loves her. I said, stop, hold right there. And then Michael was in the background. You can see that shirt she's wearing there? That's the same shirt. She stole her mom's shirt. I never noticed that. Someone actually pointed that out to me. But this is, you know, I love the fact that SVA used this photograph for kind of the promo today, and it's just, you know, her peeking out from a little bit from her reality, and you get a kind of peek into it a little bit with Michael in the background. But this is his walk-in closet, and so he lived in New Jersey. This, interesting enough, I stopped photographing from about a year. I still saw them. I go through phases where sometimes you're just tired and life takes over. But I started seeing them more and more as a family again, right? The father was they broke up. The father was in New Jersey. But now I saw them more and more. All of a sudden we're having dinners together and people are laughing and stuff. So, you know, it's like the new normal, right? Divorced parents and, you know, the new normal. So this is back in Ludlow Street, and the middle boy, I'm going to speed this up a little bit. The middle boy is not going to school. He's this, you know, the one that's a little bit of a work in progress, I was saying. He was cutting his school a lot, and they're trying to figure it out. This is Michael. I think he was a senior in high school. That's Nutmeg's butt, asleep in the back. And you can see there's a bunk bed, a bed, and then that went up to another bed. Okay, this is a different configuration of the bedrooms. Yeah, look at that, he's playing video games. But this is, I love how she's intertwined with her mother. And again, she has huge feet. I don't know why, I always stick on that. And that's Michael over there. And again, she just did this. I don't ask him to do this. I'm there reading a book, I'm eating a meal. You know, he clearly doesn't care, so he's playing video games. The mom's talking to the oldest brother, and I would just jump up and say, Cindy, look at me for a second. Look here, and she will. And then she'll hold it. She's great. She'll hold it. This is called 5 Days Before College, and this is Michael's about to go to college. He finished a high school system, and he struggled a little bit, but he did it. This is at their grandma's house on Houston Street. And I love the fact that he might just be blinking, right? Or he might just be resting, but he kind of looks content to me. You know, going off to college, which is kind of a new phase of your life. And then again, Cindy's just, you know, she'll hold her gaze with me as long as I kind of want. She gets frustrated over sometimes. She is a teenager, right? So this is at grandma's house on Houston Street, another house that I would have to run around and find them. You know, apartment 10M, right? So I'd bang on their door. So again, I'm the uncle, the weird uncle with a camera, but I'm the weird uncle with a car. So I drove Michael to college, and so I drove him to college. I did a round trip, 8-hour trip, like drive there, dropped him off, hung around school, and I drove home. This is you know, him getting his freshman paperwork in his new room, and I love the blank walls, kind of like a new start. So when he's off in college, I really started spending most of my time with her. I've spent most of my time with her for the last like 5 years. I was telling Jaime before, she's been like my entry. She's always been my entry point because she's the only one that actually responds to like my text messages and phone calls, and she will actually meet me at a time, you know, versus sometimes the mother's like, I don't know, maybe I'm here, maybe I'm not, but she would always meet me. She's a great kid. She's in college now. She struggled a little bit in high school. They weren't the greatest students, but she thrived and she graduated. Now she's a sophomore in college. Michael tried to teach himself how to play the piano via YouTube videos. I love the fact she's wearing a Supergirl shirt, as in, you know, she's pretty strong. And I'm always looking for like little weird things about photographs, so not weird, but a little, I always say, you know, a little, and I love the fact that her finger's pushing down one key. This is Michael home from college, and if you saw and if you lived and spent time with him, he had a hard time in high school, right? Stuyvesant's very demanding, gotta work your ass off. Pretty sure he was bullied a little bit. He's very shy, but he came back from college, and this, to me, he's just so much more comfortable with his own skin, and he's always reading. He's a very smart kid. He's always reading. So you can kind of see the bunk bed system there. So I make a concerted effort when the kids come home from college, and I'll show you some pictures from this year, to get there as much as possible. And I'll text them and be like, when are you coming back? And here's tell me, I'll be here, I'll be back in a little bit, or this dates, and I'll try to make it work. This is one of the few pictures and only pictures I show outside of a small Chinatown apartment. We had gone, I took her swimming. We went to a public pool on Houston Street somewhere. Brought my camera, guess what? You're not allowed to take pictures inside of a public pool, right? So you're like, okay, well, you lock that up, you go swimming for a couple hours. You know, that kind of bums me out because maybe I could get something in the pool. On the way home, we had a little bit of a sun shower, and we were on the other side of the street, right? So what do you do as a photographer? What are you always looking for? Lights, very good. So I'm like, you know what? Let's cross the street. There's some light over there. And then I found a nice spot for her to stand, and she held it for me for a little bit. You can see her bathing suit a little bit, her top, and I love her feet, a little cockeyed like that. So this is when the book came out. This is the very last picture in the book, because I like kind of ending with this in terms of opening up getting a little of the pressure out of the project, right? So this is the last picture in the book, which came out in 2016. And it's the only one that's really outside of a small apartment in Chinatown. And I just love the openness of it. Like, again, fresh air. It kind of opens up the pressure a little bit, lessens the pressure. But I kept shooting. Guess what? Life continues, correct? You don't stop because a book came out. You don't stop because life continues and things change. And so I kept shooting. So this is really new work that's not been seen before, and this is what I'm really actually, there's like about 12 or 13 pictures that I'm excited to show because I haven't really showed it at all. So this is, he now lives in the Bronx. This is his apartment in the Bronx. He has a roommate, and that's he moved into his roommate, it's a spare bedroom, so that's like his roommate's stuff. Like he's a collector of stuff. But again, I'll make a concerted effort. I drove up to the Bronx, went out to lunch with him, made some pictures. So now he lives in the Bronx. This is about a year ago. This is a month before college. You could actually see the date, July 24th, right? Last year. She is about to go off to college. That's grandma in the background. And so this is on Houston Street, and I love, again, the kind of the embrace a little bit. Shirley's the mom. She made the decision when the father moved out. She decided to move in with the old lady, right? She didn't have to, but she was taking care of her 24/7, so she made some more money. So there's a certain point where there were no parents at the house whatsoever, all right? Shirley would always go by, and you would go and eat dinner there, but then the kids would go back to home by themselves, or I'll walk them home, or Cindy would stay there. But that's some of the pictures from earlier. That was, interesting. You let 3 teenagers who are in high school live by themselves, and the mom calls you up and say, hey, you did your homework? What do you say? Yeah, sure I did. And then they continue binge watching. I mean, I binge watch a lot of Netflix with them. I'm like, shouldn't you be doing homework? So I know she had she loves her mother, but also she knows that she felt like, I wouldn't say abandoned, but like it was a little challenging because Cindy would sleep on that couch for months on end, right? This was actually kind of tough because this was actually at the time where her middle brother should have been in college, but he didn't go to college, so he kind of owns Ludlow Street, and he would play video games until like 4 in the morning, and it was very hard for her to do her homework and try to wake up early and go to school. So she slept on that couch for many months. But I love the embrace a little bit. And guess what? I drove her to college. So me, the father, and the older brother. The middle son, again, didn't want to come. We drove her to college. I love the fact that Jurassic Park thinks has her name up there. So again, the blank slate, I drove her to college. And, that she chose that bed, right? And I spent about 2 days, 24 hours up there with her, and then drove the father back. But I love that she thrived enough and made it off to college. So now she's a sophomore in college. Throughout this experience, guess what? Shirley met a man online in China, went back to China, and married him. So that's their crazy poster that. Yeah, so they made a poster, they made a music video, and they made a CD. I can show you the music video, but it's hard to watch.
That's the husband, he looks young.
Yeah, there's a lot of Photoshop in there. But she looks younger too. There's a lot of Photoshop. But they made like these posters. She's like, "You want a poster?" I'm like, "That's okay." But I got a CD, and I have the link to her music video if you ever want to see it. So she met a man on online, went to China, and married him, and then she came back, and he's still over there. And so I see her like the Chinese love the WeChat, right? So she does the WeChat with him, and but I love her face. Hey, your mom got remarried. You get that look. Shirley makes some interesting decisions. Yeah, and that's grandma in the back. And this is about a year ago. This is this past Christmas, I guess now about 9 months ago, and everybody was home. So this is what I'm saying when I love the fact when they're all home, I go there, and there's Franklin up there playing video games on his phone. There's actually a human in here. He has a girlfriend now, but she was asleep. There is a human in that. But Michael and Cindy are home from college. Franklin's playing video games. He kind of runs Ludlow Street by himself. But I love, this is they're just reading and talking. And, I'll have a snack with them, and then I'll be like, okay, look at me for a second. And I have a couple where her arms are around his neck, and she moved her head. She's great to photograph. I think she should be, I've encouraged her to take, like, acting classes or something. Maybe not be a model, but, when, many of you are photographers, I take most of you, and she would look at you like this when she's photographing, and she'd go like this. And she'd go like this, and then being a teenager, it's like, you done? Yeah, I'm like, okay, I'm done. All right, but she'll hold it, and then she'll look like this. She'll give you different looks, which is like she's so used to it. It's crazy. This is from this past spring. I make a concerted effort now, even though it's harder to see the kids, to go to see the mom. It's a little dark in here, but she's blow drying and straightening her hair. This is at Henry Street. Before she goes out, she straightens her hair and puts 8 pounds of makeup on. I love the fact that her hand is so close and out of focus, because that means I'm like right next to her. We're right next to each other, and she's holding the mirror right here, and I'm photographing her like that, basically. We're on a bunk bed. You can see the bunk bed up there, right? There's no upper, it's all full of crap. It's this, there's no upper bunk. It's full of suitcases and clothes. But this is one of the few photographs I get of her where she's not, like, posing or whatever. She's a little harder to photograph. But the old man's still alive, and this is Henry Street. This is the old lady. The old lady, she died. This is her apartment, so he's back there. You can see the amount of clutter in the apartment. Shirley is always, providing food, and so the dragon fruit. So I'll say, I'll come over there and she'll cut me a meal, and I'll say, "Ooh, that's pretty. I'll photograph that before we eat it." And the Chinatown red bags are all over the place. The amount of clutter is pretty impressive. This is, again, I think she's home for spring break. If you had noticed in a lot of pictures, there's a mirror, right? This is my favorite Lams of Ludlow Street mirror. They move it all over the apartment. Well, the apartment's not very big. They move it all over the room. And I love the fact that they're constantly rearranging the bedroom and moving the mirror, because it's always something new. She's always on her phone. She's a teenager. I have 10,000 pictures of her staring at her phone. And as a photographer, what do you have to do? Find 2 that you like, right? You got to edit it down. I just love, again, with that weird thing, I love the fact that her toe's sticking out of her stocking. And it's reflected here. They decorated this middle son decorated the bedroom with these pear and apple Christmas lights. And this is pretty relaxed, and there's a mattress on the floor. So I don't think there's a bed. I don't know where the bed went. So they threw a mattress on the floor. This is, hey, look at that. He's playing video games. So this is Franklin, who's now about 22. Not a bad kid at all. Just a little bit of, like I said, a work in progress. There's that mirror again. That's actually, that's shot through a mirror. So he's actually he's like right behind me. But I love the Polaroids he has a girlfriend now, the Polaroids they put up there. So the Polaroids kind of confuse you a little bit with the mirror. That mirror is fantastic. You'll see the mirror all over the place. This was about a month ago. There's Cindy's home for college. She worked at a summer camp in Chinatown, and Shirley came by and prepared a meal. And Cindy's hidden in the bunk bed. You know, that black thing right there is not a mistake. That's a curtain. Shirley is still taking care of the 89-year-old man now. You can see his feet right there. There's his feet. And so it's a very small apartment on Henry Street. So I will say, like, can I come say hello? So I'll spend an hour with her there, and then she'll say, okay, you go to Ludlow Street, you get Cindy, and then we'll go to a restaurant on East Broadway. I said, all right. So I do a lot of walking around Chinatown, just finding, you know, this random family. But she works there all the time. She's there all the time. I love her shirt says thank you upside down. Right? So why is it upside down? But there's Bo right there. And I also want to make a concerted effort to see Bo because he's been in the hospital like 3 times in the last 6 months. So he's a nice old man, but he's getting old. There adds a new face to the family, and that is Franklin's girlfriend, Linda. And there's Stephen. Stephen now works at Trader Joe's on Delancey Street. He lives in the Bronx, so he takes the train down. He liked it better than the Trader Joe's up in Westchester, somewhere in the Bronx, because now after that he could go kind of see the family. So Delancey Street's obviously very close to Ludlow Street. So I was there. He just come back for work. I love the hand gesture. And they were watching TV, and I'm like, just below the TV, and so again, she will hold my gaze, you know, she will hold the gaze for a while. I love this picture when we talk about moving the narrative forward, because the new girl, and I love just the hand gesture of him. And guess what? I know the story, right? So he's visiting from working at Trader Joe's after work. And this was this summer. This was maybe, you know, July. So I'll end with this and then leave it up for questions if you want. I'm lucky enough to grow up here in New York City, meaning, and I'm lucky enough that my grandparents built a house on Fire Island 50 some odd years ago. They have since passed away, but me and my mother have it. So I'm a school teacher, so I'm off during the summer. So I work at a summer camp. You don't really need to know this information, but I spend the summers out in Long Island working at a summer camp, and she came and visited me for 3 or 4 days. And so her and her father came, and this is just her swimming in the ocean. And this was maybe about 3 weeks ago. I fully plan to continue doing this. Life does not end, right? Life goes on. I go through ups and downs where you do shoot, you don't get anything, but I've clearly learned over 16 years that if you're dedicated and it's something that you feel, you know, something that resonates with you, you plow through those barriers, right? You just don't quit. And so it's a little harder to shoot. I was telling Jaime before, I have a full-time job and a kid, so it's, you know, you have to figure out and balance it. But I wanted to end also just to talk about the process of this whole thing. What I find pretty remarkable about it is, you know, it was kind of like a documentary style photography, black and white, shooting the streets in New York City. There's the guy selling the bok choy. Oh, look at the guy selling the crabs. This, you know, street photography, really trying to get to know the neighborhood. So what began in more of a traditional street photography, I hate just kind of putting genres on things, but a little street photography project turned into something much more personal, right? And it has nothing to do with it has nothing to do to me how Chinese people live in New York City. It has nothing to do with that. This is a family. This is, you know, it's become much more about family to me, how life is not so easily scripted, right? It's ups and downs and has nothing to do with where you're from. This is happening all across the world with people struggling with work, school, parenthood, children. It's about family. You know, I find it really interesting that, again, it started off as like a traditional documentary photography, roaming the street. Hey, I'm young, you know, Robert Frank wannabe. And then it just turned into, you know, through your teachers asking you to push yourself to making phone calls, making emails, rejection, struggles, blocks all the time, creative blocks all the time, switching from black and white to color, you know, film to digital. It turned into something so much more, it just resonates to me so much more than, you know, I would have gotten bored shooting on the streets of Chinatown. right? Because, we all could do it. We could all get those same pictures. But that's what I love about this is that it's not a project anymore, and I hate lazily using that term project. It's what I do. It's part of my life, right? What I do is I go to work, I raise my child, and I see the lambs every 2 weeks. It's just something I do. It's not like gotta plug away at this project anymore. It's just, it's like visiting. You guys visit family, you visit your best friends. It's kind of like that. So I love the fact that through photography, just something happens. Like I always, I tell my students, photography for me is an excuse to go take a walk, go somewhere you've never been before, right? Go explore. It's way too easy to stay at home and watch TV. We've all done it, right? So I love, the need to make work get you, exploring and get you to places you've never been before, meet people you never met before, engage in the world, heaven forbid. Okay, so I'm just gonna end it right now, I suppose, and then leave it up to any kind of questions. Is that what we decided, Jaime? Is that it's 8:08 right now? So
It's been a great conversation, but if people still want to ask some questions, by all means, just repeat the question, please, because we're
Okay.
need that mic over there.
okay, sir.
Did they consider at any point leaving that apartment, given how small it was? Could they?
They thought about it, but it's rent stabilized, or at least pretty manageable. They asked, the gentleman asked about them leaving the apartment. Their apartment, the building got sold to new owners 2 years ago, and it's completely being renovated around their apartment. Meaning that, out of 15 apartments in there are like 3 Chinese families left. The rest are like hipster, 23-year-olds. They completely zhuzhed up the apartment a little bit. Not theirs, but the building itself. However, I think they just signed a lease to extend it a little bit. And if the owners really wanted them out, they would have been out by now. They thought about maybe looking into like Section 8 buildings, but it's very manageable, and the owners have been pretty chill with that. But it definitely, I go up to 5th floor and I hear, Caucasians having a party, and I poked in my head in some of those apartments because I'm nosy, right, when they're under construction, and they've removed the 4 inches of plaster and have exposed brick, and they kind of put some new lighting in there, but the apartments are still tiny, but the rents are outrageous. So I understand why the owners did that, but I don't know how much longer they have in there, but I know they extended at least a couple years, but literally, theirs is like this old Chinatown apartment, and everything else is like hipsters. He asked me about the context, and I'm not there to speak all the time. For the book, I wrote little captions, I have an essay in the back of the book. I had a show at the Museum of the City of New York this past year, and there was some wall text, and they asked me to write a paragraph on like 5 photographs that I felt needed a little further, context, or at least why I chose this photograph. So I photographed like the meal with the newspaper, so I used that one, and I photographed the first one where the little girl's in the curtain, and I chose that one. So I can't be around to talk about everything, right? So the museum asked me to write, like I said, these little essays for about 5 of them. Wall text helps. There's an essay in the back of the book. She asked how I felt about switching from film to digital, and that's it opened up the places I could shoot, right? If you're familiar with digital, right? It's incredible, right? So like I'm an old guy, so I like film, but like the fact that you could shoot in low light places with this high ISO with a digital camera, which you couldn't do with film, it opened up. I could shoot now in these rooms that are just like, I could shoot now with her, and the only light's like a little bit of window light in her phone. I didn't shoot more because I still wait for like a moment to resonate, but then I shoot it a lot. Like if you ever to see my, I don't know, you don't have contact sheets anymore, but you see your raw files, you see like, I would say like 6:15, Tom starts shooting. You shoot 30 pictures until 6:30, then that's it. And then I'll go home, or I eat and nothing else happens. So I still try to, look at things and feel if it feels right. You could certainly shoot 1 million pictures now, right? But that's one of the things I like. I think I like about having learned on film first is that you become slow and deliberate, and like, you know how you have to hoard your film because you're running out of film, so make sure it counts. So I kind of keep that same mindset. But the fact that I can shoot now in lower light is a world of difference.
The creative process is very mysterious, and beginnings and endings are hard to pin down. But do you think this is a lifelong work for you, or do you see a possible ending at some point? Let's say
I don't like
the Ludlow Street apartment.
That might be. I don't think that will end it. That might change it dramatically, right? They're still, I'm still alive. They're still alive. Stories still evolve, right? Again, life is kind of ups and downs and messy. So as long as I keep in touch with them and could find where they live, I like the fact they still have the Ludlow Street apartment because that's like a base for me. It's I walk by it, and I've walked up that staircase thousands of times. But I don't think I'll stop. Like I said before, I go through pauses where I go through a stretch where I'm just getting slammed at work or whatever, and I can't get there. But I'll text them and see what's going on, and weekends. I can go on weekends. But I wouldn't. Why would I? For myself, like I'm not going to stop because the story continues. All our stories continue. She asked the film stock. A film stock I used. I did Tri-X, the good old classic Tri-X. I still have I have 3 cameras, 2 digital and a film camera at home. It's loaded with Tri-X, and I'll grab it with my son. I mostly just shoot my pictures of my son with the black and white. I think Kodak still makes Portra. Yes. All right, so I shot Portra for many years with the 645, Portra 400. I didn't like the grain on 800, and I struggled with that. And again, once I switched to digital, the grain that they could get rid of now in digital is just like an logarithm or something, So, and now I shoot with a Nikon 35 millimeter camera. Yeah, it's all mirrorless now, right? But I still have a mirror. I spent so much money on these. Are we getting into tech talk? Zeiss makes lenses for Canons and Nikons. So I've spent thousands of dollars on, these Zeiss lenses that fit a Canon, a Nikon DSLR with the bayonet, right? And so like, I'm not about to jump to maybe perhaps a Sony mirrorless camera, which are supposedly remarkable, because I got these lenses. I have 3 cameras and they all have 35 millimeter lenses on it.
Okay.
That's it.
That's it. That's awesome.
Prime. I'm used to seeing it like that, right? So you train your eye to look at this and know 35 millimeter, I probably get that, right? So if I move back, I get that, right? If I move in, I get that. So 28 gets a little distorted for me.
Right.
So I have 3 cameras and I only shoot with a 35. I do have a 50, which I do some other stuff with, but I'm not showing that today. Okay, so he asked if I'm working on any other projects, and you were asking me that before. I think it's important as a photographer to cleanse the palette every once in a while, right? You know what that means? Right? Because I've been photographing his family for so long, so I do other things. I'm working on, I'm not showing it, but I've been working on an abstraction project for the last couple of years. Has to do with Chinatown. I roam the streets of Chinatown, and I use a 50 millimeter lens. I could get pretty close to storefront windows, and I look for abstractions. You can see it on my website, but I'm going to start putting it on Instagram sooner or later. But I do a abstraction project. I kind of blend 2 pictures together. It's really completely different, right? It's more like, it's kind of pretty and fun, but I like doing it because it's using your eye differently, right? Switching cameras, I switched to a 50 millimeter lens, which is normal, right? This to that, this to that. And what it is Chinatown. So I love Chinatown. My family lives down there. So I do an abstraction project in Chinatown during the winter because it's dark at 5, right? So the stores are still open, neon lights are still on, the markets are still open, but it's dark. And so I do that, and that's going to start kicking in soon because it's dark out, getting dark out. So the connection is Chinatown. I mean, you look at the pictures, I don't think you could tell. But I love roaming the streets, and I know some great restaurants. So like, it's an excuse for me to go down there, grab a bite to eat. Oh yeah, completely. Completely. I just, today's Michael's birthday. I gave him a shout out. And so Shirley's birthday was 4 days ago. I went to a wedding with them, you know. I didn't mention it before, but in 2004, they went to Hong Kong to visit their family, and they invited me. So I went. And so all their Chinese relatives in Hong Kong were like, who's this guy with the camera following you around? And so you got their own personal paparazzi following them around. And I don't show many of those pictures, and that's part of the process. I don't show many of those pictures because there's one or two I love, but I don't show many of those, but that was part of the process. I definitely feel very comfortable around them. I mean, they fall asleep, you know, I get there and they fall asleep, and I'm like, thanks, guys, you know, but, you know, they came visit me, I visit them, they're at my wedding. You know, it really is, you know, not a photography project anymore. It's something you visit family, you know. And to jump back on your question, it's something, you know, I love this family a lot, right? And our lives continue, right? I was saying, so like, you know, it resonates beyond, you know, a photography quote unquote project. It's like I said before, it's something I do. You know, they feel pretty comfortable around me. I'm always nervous though when the New York Times has published it 3 times, like in the Lens blog, which is now dead. You know, I had a show at the Museum of City, New York, and they know the pictures are out there, but every time it came out in the paper or when they came to the museum, I was always a little nervous, you know, just because they know the pictures, they're familiar with them. I send it to them, you know, you make a JPEG and just, you know, text it to them. But I'm always, you know, wary. But the mother loves it. The father loves it. The father said it's great. You know, I'm divorced now, and the kids are, they have a record, you know. But I always get a little nervous when it gets put out in the world again. You know, when I met them, I was a student, right? I'm fairly certain the mother is, I wouldn't say not unaware, but, you know, we're photographers and we look at blogs and we look at books and stuff like that, and we go to galleries and museums. It's taking a life on its own out there in the world. And the mother, I think, knows that, you know, but doesn't realize how big it is. It made a couple of Chinese newspapers, right? Chinese local newspapers like the World Journal or something like that. And that was bigger for them than the, like, I had a double page spread in the New York Times, right? That was bigger for them because it was because their friends in Chinatown were like, holy crap, that's Shirley, you know? So, and that, for me, I was like, that's the Chinese newspaper. I like it in the New York Times, but they got more, you know, they got more play from that from friends. The father got stopped on the subway once. It was like, are you the guy from the Chinatown project? And then he went somewhere and put his name down for, like, he filled out an application or something for a form or something. He wrote Stephen Lam, Ludlow Street, and the person was like, wait, are you the Chinatown project? He's like, yeah, that's my family, you know. But that's two instances. But he was stopped on the subway once. But I'm always nervous when you know, something else gets published, right? Because it is someone's lives, you know, and you are kind of showing kind of like warts and all. They do smile, you know, but I always get a little, you know, nervous when you have a show because people are seeing it, and I know the context, but what happens when someone else looks at your work? Everyone has different experiences with it, right? You know, never read the comment sections on blogs. Because you see some pretty random stuff. I've seen rants on immigration on my comment sections on the New York Times, like, wow, that has nothing to do with any of this, you know? And there's one picture where there's a stereo behind Stephen in the Bronx. Remember where he has all the bric-a-brac? And I saw like 5 people arguing what kind of amplifier it was. I'm like, wow, this has nothing to do with what we're talking about. No, I'm really sure it's a Techniques 2000. No, it's an agent. When, you know, people hop onto funny things. But
Just do one more.
yeah, any questions? Don't the shoot. You know, I mean, why, you know, incandescent light photographs how? How do light bulbs photograph? Yellow, right? What is shade photograph like? Blue, right? You know, it's you know, color has a temperature, something, right? So color temperature, right? So the cool light, you know, I know what particular you're talking about, right? That's a light bulb in the corner. You know those light bulbs that they come on a hook and you put it in a construction site? They bought one of those, right? And then that's just light coming from a window. So I don't do much with lighting. I just shoot whatever is there. I do turn on a lamp every once in a while. Like it is dark, so I'll turn on a lamp or those weird Christmas lights, anything. But that's why switching to digital really opened up the whole possibility, because I couldn't shoot this with film, because then I would have to use a tripod and, quarter second, hold that. Let me hold this. Let me go get the tripod. So that's a light bulb and that's warm light. So I don't do anything. You put the old camera on raw, and auto white balance and let it rip and figure it out later.
Thank you
Any
so
questions?
much.
Thank you.